Hello and welcome back to another chapter of Trial by Fire by Dragons Are Cool on AO3. Chapter 3, Hunt. It was a short walk back to the truck, and the night was still relatively young. It should have been fine. But then they heard the door slam, and saw the camera go fuzzy. "That's a hunt! Scar, hide!" Impulse shouted over the radio. They hadn't expected a hunt to start so soon, but to their horror, and an undeniable bit of comedic effect, the Vex just spooked and nearly spun in circles, bumping into walls and knocking as many things over as the ghost was. The funniest part was that it nearly worked. The ghost paused a moment to just stare at the fiasco, tilting its head in apparent confusion before actually attacking. Skiz came booking it up the ramp then, and joined them at the monitor. "Oh, Scarface!" He sighed heavily, and Impulse gripped his arm tightly. "I shouldn't have left him in there. Stupid." He knocked his fist against his forehead. "Clearly, we still have some training to do." Impulse turned to study the map rather than watching Scar writhe in the hands of the ghost. "We could probably drag him back to the garage and hide there for a while." "Grian?" Impulse turned at Skiz's concerned tone to look at their smallest teammate. His face was white as a sheet, and there were tears pouring steadily down his cheeks. "Whoa, Grian!" Impulse pulled him into a tight hug. "He's gonna be fine. He'll be fine, okay?" "I'll bring him back. That's my thing, remember?" Skiz held onto Green's hands. "We talked about this before." "But he died," he choked out. I know," Impulse soothed. He spared a glance at the screen, then, just in time to see the ghost round the corner out of view. Scar's body was left sprawled face first into the wall, leaning up into it awkwardly. Hopefully they could move him before the position hurt him too badly. That happens sometimes in this job, though. He hiccuped. "I don't want to die." He cut off entirely with a broken sob. Okay. Impulse looked over at Skiz, who was looking more and more like a kicked puppy by the moment. The poor guardian angel already hated when people in his care died, and Green's distress over the situation was not helping. "Clearly we have a lot more to discuss after this, but right now we need to go get Scar back up and going. The sooner we do it, the easier it'll be." Skiz shook himself a bit and stood from where he had been leaning on the table. "Do you want to stay out here, G?" He shook his head ferociously, and stood from the stool, pushing past Impulse and towards the back of the van. The other two followed quickly on his heels. Impulse grabbed a crucie on his way. Impulse noted that seemingly involuntary full-body shudder that passed through Green as he crossed the threshold of the house again. His wings were still all ruffled up as he dropped to his knees beside Scar's fallen body. "Let's get him out of the ghost room first, G." Skiz placed a hand on his shoulder as he squeezed past him in a narrow hallway so he could get to Scar as well. Impulse went to place the crucifix, while Skiz lifted Scar's lanky form awkwardly in his arms, and started making his way deeper into the house. "Why aren't we taking him outside?" He could just make Grian's words out as he followed them a few paces behind. His voice was still weak and shaky. "'Cause his soul is in the haunt now. It's easier to pull it back into his body from here than out there," Skiz patiently and clinically explained. "I could do it from outside too, but I'd rather avoid it if we can." "It'll be easier on both of them this way," Impulse chipped in. "So you just pull his soul back in? Then what? That's it. Then we wait for him to wake up. Skiz settled Scar carefully on the floor of the garage. Impulse placed the pillow he napped from the couch behind his head. Let's get this going, then. Skiz closed his eyes and let the shell hiding his angel form thin slightly. The marks on his arms darkened and deepened, but remained closed as he started to glow a faint blue, especially concentrated around his head and hands. He placed his hands on Scar's chest and bowed his head in focus. His face was a stone-cold mask of calm, and despite the situation, Green couldn't help the slight easing of his stress at the sight. Skiz looked like, well, an angel. There we go. He sat back up a moment later. That was quick. Impulse purposefully tried to keep his tone light, hoping to keep the sense of calm their guardian angel had accidentally imparted on their avian friends. His soul's a lot smaller than yours, Dippled-up. Handy. Impulse was watching down the hallway to the kitchen, keeping an eye out for the ghost. I'm gonna go double check the thermometer. Careful, Skiz warned on habit. Impulse could feel Green's wide-eyed stare burning holes in the side of his head. There's a crucie down. I'll be quick. The crucies prevent the hunts? Green asked weakly. They can, yeah. If the ghost is close enough to them, they have a limited range, though. Skiz took up the explanation, glad of a way to try and distract his other friend from the still slightly dead one laying at their feet. That's why we don't usually bring them in till we find the ghost room. That's where the ghost is most likely to hunt from. But not guaranteed. Skiz loathed the waver in Green's voice. This job was scary for the ghost alone. He didn't want Green to be fearing something like this on top of it. It did not feel good to his guardian soul. No, Skiz shook his head. They can wander a bit too. Like when they move rooms? Sometimes, but they can walk around without switching rooms too. Green stared at him, puzzlement just starting to edge out the fear. He opened his mouth to speak again, but was cut out by the crackle of the radio. We have freezing temperatures, Impulse confirmed. I'm grabbing the extra crucie and some smudges. Good call. Impulse came back not a minute later, trailing heavily scented smoke from the still slightly smoldering remains of the quick burn smudges. That should buy us some time. He set the sub on the workbench against the wall. We might not need it. Skiz put a hand on Scar's shoulder as he started to stir. Scarface? How we doing, buddy? He gave a disgruntled grumble before he spoke. What happened? The ghost got you. You feeling okay? He pushed himself up from the floor a bit. My back hurts. Oof. Green tackled him in a tight hug upon seeing him start sitting up on his own. You landed a bit funny when the ghost was done with you, Skiz explained as he prepared to stand before scooping up both Scar and Green in his arms. Impulse helped steady them as he stood. Let's get out of here. Did we get the ghost? Skiz was reassured by Scar's chatty nature. He hoped it was having the same effect on Green. Scar was fine. He didn't even seem particularly rattled by the whole experience. We got freezing temperatures. We'll double check the ghost type back in the truck. Impulse led the way out. They were halfway down the waterway when the front door slammed hard. All the hairs on the back of Skiz's neck stood up, and he heard Grian yelp. He leaned back a bit to balance as the avian flinched and buried himself even closer to him and Scar. Impulse had another smudge stick out and the lighter ready to go, but the lights were holding steady. Impulse ran over and tried the door, pulling it open with no problem. Just an event. He held the door open anyways, and waved the others through quickly. He pulled the door shut behind himself and locked it again. They would not be needing to go back in again. And that is the end of Chapter 3.